Welcome to The Point. I'm Marcia Kramer. This week, Governor Cuomo made his annual State of the State address as New York faces an estimated $6 billion budget gap. One of the governor's toughest critics is Republican Assemblywoman Nicole Malliotakis, who is demanding changes to the new criminal justice reform laws. Let's get the point of view from the five-term Albany lawmaker herself. Nicole Malliotakis is here. We want to thank you for joining us, and I want to start right in with bail reform. Just this week, a 26-year-old homeless man who attacked two women, unprovoked assaults on the same day, was released on bail. Was released with no bail. But here's the thing: he had an old warrant for his arrest for 3 months for this 3 months old for the same crime that he committed 3 months ago. So he didn't come back to answer that charge. And yet, despite the fact that the district attorney asked for bail, he was let off on supervised release. How do you feel about that? Is that okay?
It's absolutely not okay. Certainly, if he didn't return for a court date previously, what makes the judge think that he's going to return for this court date? And I think that's one of the issues that we're seeing with bail reform is not only are they not considering if somebody's going to return to court, but also think about dangerousness. Do they pose a threat to society? Obviously, this individual does if he's a repeat offender. Look at criminal history. We're seeing individuals with multiple prior convictions and arrests.
When you hear something like this, you're a lawmaker. What do you think? What do you say? What do you want to change?
Well, so first of all, this bill, people should know, that was shoved down our throats in the middle of the night on the last day when the budget was passed on April 1st. We had protested and said that we should have had public hearings. We should have taken the input of law enforcement, of the District Attorneys Association, which is very much opposed to this new law. We should be crafting a bill that should, number one, give everyone their constitutionally protected right to a speedy trial, and that means investing in our court system, but also ensures that we're only dealing here with low-level crimes and perhaps first-time offenders, which is not what this law does at all. We have some serious crimes in here. You have drug dealing, you have homicide, you have manslaughter, you have aggravated assault of a child, for example. But we should also be considering criminal history. Why should someone with multiple prior arrests or multiple convictions be eligible for this?
So in this case, this was Eugene Webb, the 26-year-old homeless person. Should he have been released without bail?
He should not have been released, in my opinion. And in fact, he should have been sent for a minimum, at least a 72-hour evaluation to see if he has mental health issues. And what we see with the mentally ill, as you know, and you covered me in the mayor's race, mental illness is a big issue that we've brought up solutions for. And one of those things is ensuring that individuals get mandated treatment, people get supervision. Perhaps this individual has mental illness, or perhaps he is someone who is an angry, violent person. In either case, the person should not have been released.
So let me ask you this question. The politics in Albany are going to be tough on this issue. On the one hand, you have the Senate Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, who said we should look at some changes, especially in light of the hate crimes. You have, on the other side, the Speaker of the Assembly, Carl Heastie, who says, I don't think there has to be any change. So what do you think happens in Albany? Can Carl Heastie dig in his heels and prevent any change, or is there going to be enough groundswell that he's going to have to cave?
Well, I think, can he? Yes, he can. But I think it's up to the people in this city, in this state, to call their state legislators and demand that change be made. When those legislators get pressure, they'll then go to the speaker and say, hey, we have to do something here. What I would say is this. Unfortunately, under one-party rule in New York State, we see the socialist radical wing of the legislature, and then you have the more moderate Democrats who do want change, but they're getting pushback from the socialist members, and so that's where this dynamic is happening right now. That you're seeing go back and forth. One day they're saying they're open to changes, others days they're saying absolutely not. We need to make a change, and people should go to my petition, by the way, NicoleForNY.com/bail. We have over 12,000 New Yorkers that have signed to say we need to change this law because it is dangerous. Look what just happened. Since this law, even before this law was taken effect, we had judges releasing people citing this law. We had someone who was here illegally, driving unlicensed, a hit-and-run fatality, left the scene of the accident, was arrested and then released back onto the street. You had somebody who actually confessed to a crime of homicide. That individual was released January 1st because they said they had to, because manslaughter and homicide are not part of the crimes that are ineligible.
So let me ask you this. They've said that the hate crime, people being released, they shouldn't be released because there may be a danger to the community. But one person who says that's wrong is Jumaane Williams, who's the public advocate. Let's hear what he has to say about it.
To see people using the fear of anti-Semitism to deal with bail reform is disgusting. Anti-Semitism needs to be addressed. It's been on the rise for the past year or two. It's horrible. Bail reform has been around for 6 days. Where is the correlation? The fact that people keep talking about bail reform and remand together is proving the point that all of these people were making in the first place. Judges were abusing bail to hold black and brown people in jail.
So the question is, are his criticisms valid in your opinion?
Well, they're not valid, and I'll answer his question. His question was, what is the correlation? The correlation is that this mayor, this governor, and individuals like Jumaane Williams have created an environment of lawlessness in our city and our state where people feel that they can get away with these types of crimes. It's not responsible for the rise in anti-Semitism because, as he mentioned, it happened before, but it's certainly, bail is going to add to it, and that's the problem. Now we're going to see these crimes go unpunished, perhaps, or person's going to be released and back onto the street like we just saw. The woman who attacked two Orthodox women was arrested, released, rearrested for another assault, released again, and then arrested for a third time in the same week. What does that do to our police resources? So let's think about not only the public safety aspect of this, but you're also jeopardizing the lives of our police officers, and you're utilizing resources that could be spent in tackling crime by making them go out now and find individuals over and over again. Or this individual that you mentioned earlier, the homeless individual who had a warrant out for his arrest and never returned to court. Now it's incumbent upon our law enforcement to go find him.
So the people who want to prevent change of this law are advancing a new argument. They say that it could prevent the closing of Rikers, and here's their argument. They claim that in determining how many new jail cells you have to create in the community, they set the number at 3,300. And they say if judges have discretion to set bail, there may be more people in jail, and they're not going to be able to close Rikers because they're going to have too many people because they only have 3,300 beds. Do you buy that argument, or is this just another way to try to stall?
Well, I mean, we shouldn't be releasing people just because they want to close Rikers Island. You can't allow crimes to go unpunished just because you want to close Rikers Island. And what I would say is this: we can ensure everyone gets their constitutionally protected right for a speedy trial. We can still eliminate bail for low-level offenders and first-time offenders. But we have to draw the line somewhere and say, you know, in these serious violent crimes, they are not going to be eligible. There's no reason why homicide, manslaughter, serious drug dealing, aggravated assaults, these crimes should not be eligible. And in some cases, the individual has even confessed to those crimes, and they're being released on bail, without bail. So there are things that we can do to, you know, get rid of bail in certain circumstances, but let's not jeopardize public safety. I think that, you know, they have a blanket policy here of no bail, which is very dangerous.
So let's switch to the budget, because the governor is facing a $6 billion budget gap. And although in his State of the State, he certainly didn't say exactly how he was going to close it, he gave a hint by saying he might look at cutting Medicaid payments to localities. And you know that New York City gets $2 billion worth of payments. So do you think that's a good way to try to close the budget gap?
Well, what's interesting is we're facing a $6 billion deficit, and yet the governor kept introducing more spending, more borrowing, more programs, more bureaucracy throughout the State of the State address. What I would say is we need to revisit some of the things that we've done in the past that have led us to this point, and many of those things I voted against. For example, why are we giving a tax credit to the Jimmy Fallon show? Why are we giving a tax credit for luxury yachts? Why are we spending $400 million on a new stadium for the Buffalo Bills? These are all decisions that Governor Cuomo made that I disagree with. But also, when you look at our state, I mean, the fact that the governor said that we are efficient was laughable. I mean, New York State has roughly 2 million less residents than the state of Florida, yet Florida's budget is nearly half. It makes absolutely no sense. We are in no way efficient. And I think that that's what we have to be looking at. I think the Medicaid argument is going to hurt a lot of those local municipalities because they have the property tax cap that they've been subjected to, which I agree with, a 2% cap. I wish New York City have it. That's one of the things I've been pushing for, is to ensure us that we get that. But as a result, it would be an unfunded mandate on them that's going to really hurt.
But do you think that this, talking about cutting aid to localities in terms of Medicaid, is a ploy on the part of the governor to get the legislature to raise taxes in an election year, by the way?
You know what? It possibly could be. I mean, we'd have to wait to see what he comes out with in his fiscal budget address to really get the details of this. But I can tell you that there are places where New York is certainly not efficient. I named a couple of those areas. We could be doing better as a state, and we should be. It's the reason why people are leaving the state of New York. We saw, what, a 76,000 person decline in our population because of people who are leaving due to high taxes, the inability to start businesses or expand their businesses within the state of New York. It's becoming increasingly difficult for people, especially the middle class and those that I represent, and we're seeing people leave regularly, and I want to change that.
Well, the Speaker of the Assembly, the House that you sit in, has indicated he's willing to raise taxes. I think, you know, they're looking at millionaires tax, the mansion tax, and others. Would you be willing to support increases in taxes like that, or any other taxes?
Well, it's funny because the Speaker and I had a back and forth on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, and I said, you know what? First of all, when you increase taxes on individuals, they're going to be leaving the state, as we are seeing them do now. What I had said to him was, well, what about the luxury yacht tax exemption? What about the Jimmy Fallon tax credit? What about these other things that we should be maybe eliminating or sunsetting? You know, so I think that, you know.
Are you talking about eliminating all movie and TV production tax credits,
well,
or just that one?
Well, not all of them. We have to look at the whole package and see what is it exactly incentivizing and bringing work to New York that we may not otherwise have, and then what is giving to shows that are already here that are probably undeserving. I think we need to examine the whole package. And I see some value in the tax credit, but not to the extent that they've done.
So this is probably the last question we have time for, but with New York economy so strong and the state's budget with a huge gap, does New York City have a target on its back for cuts to various aid programs from the state, because this is where the money is and the state needs it?
Well, I think it's going to have an impact, and I'll tell you what else is going to have very much an impact. The rent laws that were passed last year. People need to understand that when you artificially suppress rents in the state of New York, and our property tax levy is based on the net income, you're going to see maybe billions of dollars of lost real estate tax revenue that probably, you know, they're going to look to make up on the suburbs, Staten Island and Brooklyn. And
so are you saying that you have to revamp the rent laws that were passed?
I think we should definitely be taking a look at that, because it's going to be very, very impactful to the city of New York if we leave it as it is. You know, unfortunately, you know, there's unintended consequences to these bills, and they've got to acknowledge that, or else we're going to be in some serious fiscal situations.
What about legalizing marijuana?
You know, that's something that they're entertaining in Albany as well. I don't think that's the answer to our problems, but I think that's certainly on the table in terms of the legislature.
Assemblywoman Nicole Malliotakis from Staten Island, thank you very much for joining us today on The Point.